Mm. Always good to see you. Mm. You want to see everyone turn to the your other pages. Nice to see you.
Having a little internet issue. Hold on.
Oh, Kate,
So, Kate, it says you raised your hand. Did you? I can't see.
no.
Okay. All right. We'll see if this internet is a little better. Can you folks hear me? Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Okay. I guess I'll start. I feel like people aren't just still; they're frozen. But okay. Michelle, is my voice coming through? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll do
Do
it.
you,
Good.
do you want me to do anything if that's
No,
up?
that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
If it's not, maybe shoot me a message and I'll see it and I'll see what
Okay.
I can do.
Okay.
Hmm. Well, good to see everyone. Hmm. Hmm. So let's sit together for a little while. Hmm. Letting your eyes come to close and settling into a seated posture. Sometimes it's just really important to get as quickly as we can a sense of the weight of our bodies in connection to our chairs or cushions, to the floor, of the earth. So many ways in which we can be living in the conjured realities of the mind in a way that loses our connection to the realities of the body, physicality. We're not trying to force them into any kind of unification, but it's a regathering of the entire perspective, not banishing any part of what we have access to. And so sometimes that means feeling the energy of the mind, sometimes the voltage of it and the intensity, while also staying connected to the experience changing, coming and going of the body, which of course can have its own intensity, its own voltage. I'm not trying to manipulate or change, not even trying to settle. Sometimes, really, it's a profound spaciousness that is needed to be able to hold all of it. And not feel like we have to run from the body or the mind. If we just take these momentary experiences of emotion, of thought, anxiety, wanting, worry, and the pressure, hardness, softness, tightness, heaviness, movement of the body, receiving just one experience at a time, even if it's a flood of them. Sometimes we have the sense that we can hold it all, can be with the fullness and wildness of all that is transpiring. And sometimes we even have a sense that we can care about it. The volatility, the calm, the comforting, the painful, the suppleness of attention can care for the beauty, the joy, for the painful, the sorrow, the uncertainty, the wanting, the hardness, the softness, the wet and dry, the cold and warm. Sometimes the sense that we can be with and hold all that is happening. We can care for all that arises and passes away. not needing to go anywhere, reach anything, accomplish anything, hold on to or attain. Sensations in the body streaming by, arising, passing. Sensations in all the sense doors. Being born and passing away outside of our control. Thoughts themselves, flowing, sparkling, moving onward. We don't have to feel a stake in where they land and what's next and what's coming. Our security in the deepening capacity of the heart to care for and be with. This fluttering, flashing, inundation. At times getting caught in the eddies, swirling about. Times fully absorbed, not distinguishing self from any of these phenomena, nor solidifying a self within any of them. There's the body and the mind, the knowing of them, the discerning interests in understanding their nature, the caring for them. And as they flash in and out of existence, the heart aches, the heart is released, the heart yearns, the heart relaxes. All these phenomena coming and going. The attention untangling itself little by little through entanglement and release. Not worried about doing it right. Each moment is gone before we can fix it. Doing our best just to show up and care. Fathom this wildness without strain, without worry.
Thank you, Jesse. The talk is about cultivating patience as an aspect of equanimity in taking refuge in Sangha and in an atmosphere of goodness. On a plaque outside the New York City Library, there's something, an excerpt from something James Baldwin wrote in 1964. The whole piece is called Nothing Personal. He was James Baldwin was an author and activist. He was born in 1924, died 1987, humanitarian, and an essential voice of the civil rights movement. For nothing is fixed forever, forever, forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. So I feel that this commitment to cultivating patience, the commitment to not breaking faith with one another, taking refuge in Sangha, the commitment to non-harming and peace, all of that is, to me, being held in this atmosphere of goodness where the light doesn't go out. I think I'm very grateful for any time I got to be in Burma in the Sagaing Hills because it felt very close to timeless a lot of the time in the way that the people there tried to preserve the Buddha's teachings. And so it always had that whiff or felt sense that the Buddha had just walked by. That it was just a second ago that the Buddha was here. And his teaching that the world rests on suffering was so essential to my well-being in life. And the kind of unimaginable patience the Buddha had over lifetimes. Just like it's almost hard to imagine that lifetime after lifetime after lifetime perfecting the paramis so that he could be fully enlightened. Yeah, that just that sense of how much that held for all of us, that generosity of spirit, that generosity of wisdom. One of the first years I taught in Burma, um, somebody came up with me to visit who I called the angel Sayadaw that lived up in a monastery in the top of the hill. And at that time, he was doing years of practice, very quiet. And this person was new to Vipassana, so she asked him what Vipassana was, and he very, very quietly, um, said for her to pay attention, to bring her awareness to the rising movement of the breath at the abdomen. And then he said that Vipassana is understanding the nature of how things are. And so that mindfulness was understanding the nature of the breath, that was it with everything that appears, but you could see with the breath that you just bring your attention to it, connect, and sustain it through it disappearing. And that was Vipassana, that was being able to notice that all conditioned things, if they arise, they pass. And I felt that there was such a transmission to her. She's very, very young, but these huge tears started falling from her eyes because I felt like she got it. She got it. It was so simple and profound a teaching, the nature, understanding the nature. But if you're not understanding the nature, it's not mindfulness. It might be a good attention, but it's not understanding the nature of how things are. So Vipassana is literally being with things as they are and understanding how they are. That's it. I remember when I first sat down to sit a retreat, my first retreat, uh, and I had a glimpse of that, and I remember realizing that at this time on the planet, we all need that. We all need this so much to understand this so much in the way things have unfolded, certainly in my lifetime, even with the planet. And sometimes it can feel like the human world can be so difficult that it does feel like the light goes out sometimes. And I think that is really one of the things Jesse and I emphasize a lot, that there is a way that we need to immerse ourselves in a kind of benign aspect of nature, of beauty, um, where we understand that, say that snow is melting, right? Or it gets cold or it gets hot, or that a bird is singing, that there's aspects of nature that we watch a flower grow, unfold, right? That that way that nature can soften the heart is so critical to us being motivated to keep trying to understand all aspects of life, to include the range of joy and sorrow, the range of pleasure and pain, and finding that joy or peace that can come from immersing ourselves in a certain aspect of nature and gives us that ability to go on. We find that we can find that patience. And how I think that manifests is with upekkha, equanimity, the acceptance of how things are. So in the commentary to the Charya Pitaka, um, in the Buddha's teachings, patience um, is defined as the characteristic of acceptance. Its function is to endure the desirable and the undesirable. It manifests as tolerance. And the reason I gave that whole thing about the nature of how things are, it's seeing things as they are is its proximate cause. So I'll say it again. Seeing things as they are patience, proximate cause. So the Buddha taught that patience is one of the greatest blessings to human beings. And it's also the best moral practice. It's the best sila, this intention not to harm ourselves or others. At the back of a book called The Golden Key by George MacDonald, it's probably one of the greatest fairy tales ever written. There's a afterword instead of a forward. There's an afterword by the poet, the American poet W.H. Auden. He wrote it in December 1966. To hunt for to hunt for symbols in a fairy tale is absolutely fatal. In The Golden Key, for example, any attempt to interpret the grandmother or the airfish or the old man of the sea is futile. They mean what they are. And so he gives an example of this character in the book Tangle, who on one stage of her journey, he meets the old man of the earth. Then the old man of the earth stooped over the floor of the cave, raised a huge stone from it, and left it leaning. It disclosed a great hole that went plumb down. That is the way, he said to Tangle. And she said, but there are no stairs. And he said, you must throw yourself in. There is no other way. I think that that's often how patience feels. It's like no matter how frustrated, upset, no matter how much we're trying to make things different than how they are, it's like it requires that kind of willingness to just surrender, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a genuine acceptance, but it does require that initial jump into a kind of timelessness of how things are, not how we want them to be. He wrote, Auden wrote a lot of beautiful things about George MacDonald, but he said his most extraordinary and precious gift is his ability in all of his stories to create an atmosphere of goodness about which there is nothing phony or moralistic. Nothing is rarer in literature. An atmosphere of goodness that is neither phony, right? Right, not phony. And that's where patience does not have to be phony. It doesn't have to be grin and bear it. It's that sense of like pausing and waiting. It's called gentle forbearance or long enduring mind. So that I think of that atmosphere of goodness whenever we open the Zoom up at the Sunday sitting. It's like this sense of no matter where any of us are, how we come together in our homes, that we can take refuge in that where there is nothing phony or moralistic. I have a neighbor across the street that both of us are so busy. We we never see each other hardly, but care about each other. She's a whale researcher, a great scientist, very renowned in her work, very respected. And she came up to me when I was just about to go for a walk, just sobbing, like just sobbing. And this is so unprecedented. It's so out of her character. She's like, I would I would present her as like so solid and so not that type, and just sobbing. And I was just like, wow, what is going on? And she's like, well, I'm probably losing my job. I'll know in a day or two, but all my friends. She said, I'm a scientist. I know so many. She's a little younger than me, but she's like they're all losing their jobs. And she's like, I'm about to maybe lose her job. And she just couldn't stop crying. And I was like, this is okay. Don't worry, just cry. And then she said, the worst part is that I don't feel like I'm crying for myself. I'm crying for the poverty that's coming. I'm just, I get it, what we're heading into. And I was like, I'm going to try to find a language that might be helpful for you, but my sense of things now is that it's very hard to process all the pain that's going on, like without getting enough space. I tried to use a language that I thought she might connect with, and she was. It's like I'm like, you need space, It's like, are you ever doing anything in your days? She's like, I said, I know you work so hard. I went out once with her, not out in the ocean, but on a cliff, like counting pods and whales, and it's hard work. She's so scientific. She doesn't let anything go by that might not be perfectly accurate. So I said, what about you going to the ocean, and she just I'm kind of going faster than it happened, and she lit up and she said, "Oh, maybe I can go listen. Maybe I can just listen to the ocean, and maybe it will tell me something." And I was like, "Yeah." Mhm. There was a lawsuit in 1972. It made it to the Supreme Court in America. It was brought by the Sierra Club, and the Walt Disney Company were trying to um, build a bigger place than they ever had built before, um, right in a subalpine glacier area next to Sequoia National Park, and it was going to be a problem environmentally. Um, the court refused to take the case because they said that the Sierra Club would not be personally injured by the resort in any way. And Supreme Court Justice William Douglas wrote a dissent, and he wrote about plants and ecological entities, that they should be able to sue in the matters of their own protection. Just get it, that plants and ecological entities should be able to sue on their own behalf in matters of their own protection. He wrote, inanimate objects are sometimes parties in litigation. A ship has a legal personality, a fiction found useful for maritime purposes. So it should be the same in respect to valleys, alpine meadows, rivers, lakes, estuaries, beaches, ridges, groves of trees, swampland, or even air that feels the destructive pressures of modern technology and modern life. The voice of inanimate objects, therefore, should not be stilled. And so, what is our responsibility to that? I mean, I thought of this when she said, I could listen to the voice of the ocean. Yeah. That there's such a deep respect, right, of responsibility, of care. It's like that's all she does in her life is taking responsibility for caring about the voice, right, of the whales or the other marine life. So in this book, I have been reading called The Light Eaters about the unseen world of plant intelligence by Zoe Schlanger. She said plant personhood may be something we have to teach ourselves, and perhaps we initially strain to see it. But once seen, the care part of that new awareness comes quite naturally. You might find you respect the autonomy of plants not because you know you should, but because you know you must. Because doing otherwise would violate your own moral personhood. It is a bridge to cross from plant disregard to plant regard. The distance between the two is the orientation of one's heart. Hmm. Oh, huh. Might not find this. Hmm. Maybe I won't. No. Okay. It doesn't matter. Okay. Another possibility. Pablo Neruda wrote a poem called I Am Grateful. I am grateful, violins, for this day of four chords. Pure is the sound of the sky, the blue voice of air, the blue voice of air. So this morning, a neighbor from my childhood, she's going through what a lot of people are going through these days around how things are in the world and politics. And um, I told her that I've been very busy, but sometimes I just go out and I try to find the donkey down the street. Sometimes he's not close by, but I try to find the donkey and I just listen to him. And I said, it seems like most people are not taking enough space for processing pain these days, and that's what I do if I'm in a hurry. she, she wrote me back and she said, "You are inspiring me, even if I never knew any donkey." She's so funny. You're inspiring me, but I don't have any donkey I can go see. That wasn't the point, but I love her for that. So I don't always mean a donkey, but here's Lipo, good old the ancient poet, 701 to 762, who lived in the Tang Dynasty, China. He says, "Hardly ashore at Clear Creek, I hear it, clarity, a voice of such perfect clarity. At dusk, in farewell to a mountain monk, I bow in deep reverence to white cloud." It can be a cloud, but it's that sense that we're taking the time to make space to soften the heart so that we can be with this range of joy and sorrow that and including the pain in the world, right? And not just casually. It's like you can do it very simply, but you just respect the voices of everything else but the news and what people are repeating about it in the human world, right? It gets so crazy. I had to call somebody. It, I didn't even get to tell Jesse about this, but it's a person, Norman P. Inaya, that we're so busy these days, he too, that we tend to bump into him at the dump. So every once in a while I write him and I say, gosh, I miss bumping into you at the dump. Um, but I had to ask him a question, so I called, and his answering, his voicemail answering thing on the phone says, "I'm sorry, I lost my phone, so I can't answer you." And I know he's been sort of pulling back, but man, I thought that was just like unbelievable. It's so cool. "I'm sorry, I've lost my phone. I can't answer you back." Just so you know how it's so funny. And it's so important getting space, right? It's hard to put words into that, what that actually might mean. And I'm not saying you're going to go find a donkey or even go listen to a tree, but I'm saying it's important to respect the times and to how to process what's happening in a way that leads to more and more compassion, non-harming of oneself and others, holding each other so the light doesn't go out. Yeah. Patience. When I think about my early childhood sometimes and, being born dead and my mom basically drinking herself to death and dying was a failure in the culture. Cancer was a failure in the culture. Getting cancer was a failure. Having it, dying of cancer was a failure. Alcoholism was a failure, and none of it was talked about. So my mom finally died when I was 13, but sometimes I imagine, um, not imagine, but I feel it. I'll have occasions to feel into the loneliness of that, like the unbelievable loneliness of it. And I really reached for help with the Catholic Church. And I'm not trying to put it down, but I got kicked out officially when I was 13. I wasn't really reaching out in a way, I guess, that they saw what I needed, which was really just a hug or two. But I just want to say, when I found the teachings about dukkha by the Buddha, it was like everything in me relaxed. It was like, finally, like someone's talking about the truth of suffering, the first noble truth, the first noble truth. Old age, disease, and death are heavenly messengers. You know, it's just like when you just get the sense of that the path is one of gradually the acceptance of dukkha, right? So are we at these times? It's like this is the golden opportunity, the way that we can keep developing this wisdom and liberation and kindness, all the paramis. It's like, well, how? But it's really by taking responsibility for understanding the First Noble Truth, accepting. That doesn't mean you're a doormat, it just means that you understand it. One of the first things I heard Roshi say when I met him in Honolulu, great Zen teacher, he said, the whole world is sick. The whole world suffers and its beings are constantly dying. Dukkha, on the other hand, is resistance to suffering. It's the anguish we feel when we don't want to suffer. And how helpful is that? It's so clear. The world suffers. The whole world suffers. And its beings are constantly dying. Dukkha is not that. Dukkha is the resistance to suffering. And it's the anguish we feel when we don't want to suffer. And there is nothing wrong or bad in that. It's more just that sense of like, if you're surprised that the times are challenging, it's because of that. We can cultivate so much patience. Never mind anything else, but just that sense of even kindness. So I when you think about equanimity being the proximate cause of patience, then it's like the near enemy, the experience that seems so much like equanimity but isn't, is indifference, right? It's that turning away from suffering. It's the turning away. And the opposite is not just attachment and aversion, but the anxiety and the despair. Yeah. None of these are bad or wrong. Yeah. So that's what to remember. If those are coming up now a days, of course, it's not to push them away. It's accepting the truth of how things are. And I think this is where this morning it was so funny because the it was just yesterday or something. The neighbor was walking toward me crying, and then I was crying this morning. And I was like, wow, that was her yesterday and me today. I was like, oh, maybe we should all just like accept that that's going to be happening for some of us at times. Because if we get lost in indifference, we're not gonna we're not gonna process this, right? The grief is important when it happens. You're not trying to make it happen, but there are layers of grief, layers of anger. It's like that's what will help us understand that we're connecting to the pain. And it's always that ticket to the compassion, right? The ticket to the patience and the compassion. And ultimately, it's that with the equanimity, it's again that acceptance of that range of pleasure and pain we're born into, the range, right, of the joy and sorrow that we can connect with and eventually not identify with. Yeah. This is from Lipo again. He was in exile a lot, and a lot of long, what we would call now pilgrimages. So he's on a very long trip that's on a river. A million rock cedars spread away here. 100 million stands of privet trees, and white egrets fill endless mountains. But white gibbons on stream after stream howl. Stay away from autumn river. Gibbon cries shatter a wanderer's heart. The white gibbons are howling as he passes by. Autumn river, right? Autumn, the end of things, right? The beginning of winter. If you can't bear it, stay away from it, right? The gibbon's cries shatter a wanderer's heart. So I think there's a way in which the non acceptance of the shattered heart leads to despair and hopelessness and frozenness. It's like being able to connect with pain and find that place. And what else would motivate us to keep the light going? Yeah. To hold each other, to get liberated. For years now, when I teach young people, I repeat over and over and over and over and over and over. It's a good time to be here. It's a very, very important time to be born here. If you have something to give, if you're here to get, it's not a good time to be here. But if you have a sense that even a few moments of kindness are going to be helpful, you have hit the jackpot. Yeah. We can lose perspective, yeah? How important kindness is, which is all comes down to that patience again, that ability to um, settle back in. So that last week somebody asked about patience, and I mentioned mindfulness of impatience. And so this is why it's not that easy to teach about patience, because so much of what it is learning how to be okay with impatience, to be mindful of it, to be with it, to not take it personally. It's not ours. And our training is so much to do a lot of our action, being busy and getting things done and getting somewhere on time. And we're often doing it through willpower. We're not just like settling back and just going for the ride, that expression, enjoy the ride. Um, and when we don't enjoy the ride, we lose that connection with the truth. Like when Jesse said, feel the heaviness of your body, it's like, yes, that's how you tend to find patience. Because you're not ahead of yourself. Like we're not out of the body with the mind kind of going ahead in the future, but it's like settling back in, settling back in. And I get to practice this so much where I live. There's a highway, you only have one lane. And to get anywhere, I have to go through this harbor. And at the harbor, there are ships coming in with supplies where big trucks, empty trucks, fill up, and they fill them as much as they can. So they're extremely heavy, full. And when they take off, they can hardly move. And mostly they're going my way. They're going up this very steep, they're going up 3,000 feet from sea level, windy, slow, one way. And I'm noticing that there's more and more impatient people driving like crazy. They're starting to pass on the turns. It's like I even honked the other day. I'm like, no, it's not it's not okay to be passing here. It's just like what is going on? And I must say, I have to practice impatience. Like I practice like being okay with impatience because it seems like no matter what time I leave, it's never enough time. Like for these trucks, you don't always hit these trucks, but when you do, it's like mostly I have to say I'm going to be late for my appointment. Like that's like that's just I left early enough, but it's like that. But I know that Jesse and I have been joking about that expression from Mission Impossible, but I really feel like being with impatience is like Mission Impossible. It's like you don't have to really be accepting. You don't have to be patient to go, it's okay, right? It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. You can say it really impatient or you can say it a little bit impatient, but I'm not just talking about the highway here. I'm talking about what just unraveled in the last few weeks in the world, right? Like it's kind of unfathomable what's being required of us spiritually. And I really mean it. We can do this. We can hold each other through this. We cannot lose that light. But it does require really knowing that commitment not to harm ourselves and others. So if we happen to be patient, it's not personal, it's equanimity. If we're impatient, it's not personal. It's aversion or grasping, right? Like it's really great practice. Impatience is such a great practice. We're not trying to get rid of impatience. We're trying to get a relationship with impatience, to not take it personally, to not identify with it, and to understand that real acceptance, the equanimity is the proximate cause of patience. And the loving kindness helps. I have somebody working on my house right now. It's like there's certain places that have really rotted out and are dangerous. And he has to come from Kona far on the highway in the morning when there's a lot of traffic. And we're very similar in terms of driving and being impatient. And so I usually wait till I think he's on the road and I'll call and I'll say, how's it going? And he'll say, it's a 35 miles an hour. And then that means a lot. Like he doesn't have to say anymore because that's slow, right? And then some days he'll say, it's 45 miles an hour. Well, our highway used to be much more like 55 miles an hour. So most people went 60 and now it's 45. So I just think it's really wonderful to have humor with it. Yeah. If you can. I'm having so many conversations just with neighbors with things, how things are. And this woman drove up to me, pulled over real fast, and she's in a hurry. She's like, Michelle, I need some help. I've lost my humor. And I said, well, if you lose your humor, it's not funny anymore. That's all she needed, right? Like, it's like, that is so funny. That was wavy gravy when he ran for president way back in the old days. If you lose your sense of humor, it's not funny anymore. Mm, I have two possibilities. There's all the technical aspects. Today I wasn't sure how much time I would have to write a talk, and I looked up patience on the internet, and my own talk came up from a long time ago. I was like, oh, maybe I should just read that. I didn't, but that was pretty good. That was a good moment. Hmm. One aspect of patience that I have a great admiration in people who have this aspect of patience more cultivated is the long, enduring mind. It's often people who have a perspective over lifetimes in terms of deep injustices and poverty or, generations of trouble. And when I first went to Burma, and I think it's something that Jesse might have said the other day, but often we can live lives without really knowing how bad it can get. And so, I mean, for example, my dad was a fighter pilot in the war and for years, and he was a bit extreme, but he made me he made me learn how to eat. Just for months, he wanted me to just eat like a piece of bread, and if I was lucky, with peanut butter on it, right? Like that, he wanted to train me to be okay like that, right? And I think that that's something, it's not that I want that, but I know I can do it. And that's a lot. Peanut butter is a very healthy food. So, but I had never been, I've been around a lot of poverty, but I'd never been in a whole country that had lost so much already. And this was when I first went. So when I was trying to understand how to help the hospital and the schools that first year, and there was a doctor that spent a lot of time with me, a lot of the professional class had been educated in England. Their English was better than mine. And it's always painful when somebody's speaking perfect Oxford English. I'm like, oh my God, wow. But a lot of people were educated in England, and they had the, the, the education system was really good way back before, well, I'm saying before I got there, and then things had gotten so bad. This doctor told me that the money was deregulated within seconds. They lost everything they thought, right? But their children, his grandchildren were doing child labor and not getting any schooling. When we built the school, kids weren't even going to first grade, right? Like they lost it like that. They lost it like that. And then it almost got okay. It started to get better. And now it's gotten so much worse, right? And so it takes this long, enduring mind. When I think about what's happening to the people we know there, never mind the people we don't know there that are starving, it's just so hard. But we also always have to know it can happen where we are. That it's arrogant to think that's not possible. And part of patience is actually um, humility. And so recently, think it might have been last time Jesse talked, or in a quick Q&A, he was talking about Utu Chit, this man that we've been, Metadana has been supporting some of his projects, and they're called Generation 88s. He was in college when things went bad in 1988, and he fought in the jungle, was in refugee camps after that. And when I think of him, I think of long, enduring mind. He can't even do work inside Burma anymore. It's like he can get stuff in where, but it's basically what he's focusing now on a lot is education for people he can get out. So it's a long story, but I helped arrange for Steve to go visit one of the schools of that we've helped support, not totally, but Steve helped start the school with Utuchet about 20 years ago, and it had 5 kids. And Jesse is often overseeing a lot of our projects, and I I didn't know what had happened with it. I just thought it would be good if Steve could visit it. There's 600 students at just this one school. 600. And they're housed and fed, and he's trying to create a leadership program. But these people are facing arrests and jail to get even out, right? To get an education like they're getting right now. And but I think of watching him. I on the phone. I was watching on the phone, but I got it. It's like that's what he would have wanted. He never got that. He's doing for these students what he wished he had gotten himself. And I think that there's something to that, the long enduring mind, right? It's like, ah, there it is. It's not that that's the only thing he does, but it's moving. And then I'm going to jump to the Buddha because there's a great jump there. It's like to get totally liberated, to be free from greed, hatred, and delusion, the lifetimes, and that we can be so impatient with our own practice, right? We're so demanding, we're so judgmental of others and ourselves. And without that long, enduring mind, we can't do it. It's like, in some ways, it's all about patience, yeah. So the 3 aspects of patience that the Buddha taught, I'm not going to go into them right now, but the talk was full of aspects of them, but gentle forbearance, remembering that's not necessarily always a genuine total acceptance of things as they are, but it'll be a feeling of trust, that we understand that the reassurance of the patience is going to get us through. That's what the forbearance is. We know we want it to be different than it is, but we're able to step back, settle in to how it is. And the second is a calm endurance of hardship. And that's mostly what I'm hoping the talk really was about. That the world rests on suffering, that patience isn't passive. Calm endurance of hardship, not passive. It's not being a doormat. And then the third is acceptance of truth. And that's where the developing that long enduring mind is. We're committed to be present for the long haul. It's really living out karma. Yeah. It's living out karma, living out karma, living out karma. And so the long enduring mind really it is the acceptance of our experience just as it is, rather than how we want it to be. And this long enduring mind gives us that perspective. So we see a different perspective on time. Um, and that's what makes us not overly insistent and demanding of reality. Today's a Lipo day. We're going to end with Lipo. Mm. The book is divided, this book of poetry is divided into different times of exile or war or hardship. It's pretty cool. Page 50 on Sin Ting Tower. On this tower, as I leave our homeland, late autumn wounds thoughts of return. And heaven long, a setting sun far off, this cold, clear river keeps flowing away. Chinese clouds rise from mountain forests. Mongol geese on sandbars take flight. A million miles, azure pure. The eye reaches beyond what ruins our lives. And we do that. The eye reaching beyond what ruins our lives. That's patience. A million miles, azure pure. The eye reaches beyond what ruins our lives. May we have a long, enduring mind that leads to total liberation and complete compassion and kindness for all beings everywhere.
You, Michelle. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you all. Take care. Stay warm. See you soon.
Don't let the light go out. Don't let the light go out.